Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'll be reviewing and paging through the Swords and Wizardry complete box set from Frog God Games. Is this an excellent collector's edition of the popular original Dungeons and Dragons Retroclone? Or will you just feel like a complete fool if you purchase this complete box set? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'll be reviewing the Swords and Wizardry complete box set from Frog God Games. It's written by Matthew Finch. It is available right now and does carry an MSRP of $59.95. Let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the complete box set. A few things I do want to tackle before I jump in. First, the fine folks over at Frog God Games were kind enough to send along this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this box set with you. It's important these days that you know that. Also, I reviewed the hardcover core book for Swords and Wizardry a while back. Loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's actually one of my favorite old school Renaissance retro clones out there. And I will actually put a link in the show notes if you'd like to check out that review. So essentially, this is the same game. It is just as a box set with 4 booklets and some additional goodies inside. Because we've seen a few companies release role-playing games, and they tend to be kind of retro clones or OSR releases as box sets. Probably most famously, most people would think of the Old School Essentials box set as an example. So this is a collector's edition. This is not the Swords and Wizardry standard edition that they expect you to purchase. There's a hardcover edition of the complete book. There's also a softcover edition of the complete book. In fact, I got to be honest, I'm not even sure if you can still get the hardcover. But just wanted to point that out, that this is a collector's edition. This is not how you would normally purchase Swords and Wizardry. So you can't have a box set without a box. And the box is nice. I like the artwork on the cover of it. Flipping out over to the back. I wouldn't say that's the most exciting box back that I've seen. But you got to keep in mind, all these box sets are kind of an homage to the original Dungeons and Dragons box. So that's what they're kind of aiming at here. We'll point out that the cardboard that this box is made from is thick. So this should hold up to some wear and tear. All right, let's open this up, and we're going to take a look to see what you find inside. I did a complete page through and first look of this box set on my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch. I'll also toss a link into that as well if you want to kind of take a really deep dive into it. So first off, we had a set of dice. You know what? I'm just going to move that box. I'm going to take everything out, move it off to the side for a moment. So we had a set of polyhedral dice. I have to point out the set that I received that was part of the box set does not have a D6. It's got 2 D8s. Thankfully, if there was going to be a mix-up with the dice, the one missing, I would hope, would be the 6-sided die, because it's so easy to replace, especially for people who have never played role-playing games before or run role-playing games, who wouldn't have 12-siders, 10-siders, 20-siders, and so on. But we get a set of dice with it as well, so that's cool. We also get a pad of character sheets. A lot of times, role-playing games, you'll get a character sheet, and they expect you to either photocopy it or scan it and print them out. Here we've got a pad, and there are quite a few that are on here as well. So give you a little better look. Of course, this is an old school Renaissance role-playing game, so that means that you don't have pages upon pages of character sheet info. All your information is going to be on the front, and of course, if you need to do some notes or write down equipment, you got all the back of this as well. So I do like the fact that we got a bunch of character sheets added to it as well. We also get a little bookmark. So referees out there, game masters out there, they can mark their place in any of the 4 booklets. All right, let's jump on into the nitty gritty because this is what everybody is interested in. So a couple of things I want to talk about as far as these booklets as opposed to the all-in-one core book. The information's all the same. It's presented a little bit differently, but I compared the 4 booklets to my hardcover edition, and it's all pretty much the same, just so you know. So if you think that there's like all these like vast changes that have been made to the presentation or the mechanics of Swords and Wizardry, that is not the case. Now, one thing that is different is there is a lot of new artwork that's included in these booklets. In fact, I want to say this player book really does contain pretty much the most artwork, new artwork, I should say, for these 4 booklets. And we'll zoom in a little bit closer. I'm going to cut off a little corner because I'm going to remain up here, picture in picture. But just kind of give you an idea. The foreword, the introduction, all identical to the core book. Getting started, setting up your character. So if you are not familiar with Swords and Wizardry, Swords and Wizardry is a Retroclone. So it's designed to be similar, not exactly the same, but it is similar to original Dungeons and Dragons. And with complete, what's included is essentially everything that was in the original D&D box, as well as the various different expansion books that came out. Now, when I say everything that was included in that, I mean the rules-wise, because this does not share a common game world as original D&D did. There's no Blackmoor, there's no Greyhawk, anything like that. So all of that stuff is not in these booklets or in Swords and Wizardry at all. So there's a lot of things I really like about this system. One of them is that we see a variety of different classes. We see a variety of different character races. This is not a role-playing game where race is class. Because I cut my teeth on Advanced Dungeons and Dragons way back in the day when it came out, I like the class and race being separate. It's just my kind of thing. I know other people, they don't care for it. If they're playing a Retroclone, they want to be playing, and it's like, okay, well, I'm a halfling. That's what I do. I'm a halfling. Say, like Dungeon Crawl Classics. So we've got all the various different classes here. So we've got the assassin, we've got the cleric, we got druids, we got rangers, we got monks, we've got the paladin. Of course, we got the standard fighter as well, standard magic user. And each of the classes gets a couple of pages devoted to it, which I got to be honest is more than enough. It really is more than enough. One thing about old school Renaissance role-playing games, they tend to be much more rules light than you see with more modern role-playing systems, say like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, is very crunchy. Swords and Wizardry is not crunchy at all. Now, that's not to say that this is as rules light as something like the Black Hack or Knave. Gosh, Knave is like wafer light. But not that I'm knocking it. I'm just saying those rules are very light. But definitely dig the approach that Swords and Wizardry takes. Something else that I think is pretty interesting is that you have different options. So I'll get to that in just a second. So we've got dual classing, changing character classes. We've got the races. So we don't have tons of character races. We've got the dwarves, the elves, humans, half-elves, as well as halflings. Talking about multi-classing as well. Discussion about alignment. Alignment in Swords and Wizardry is lawful, neutral, and chaotic. There is no lawful good or chaotic evil. So this book here is aimed at the players themselves. So everything that the player is going to need is included in this player booklet. We get how to play. So I started to talk about how I love how we've got these different options available to us in Swords and Wizardry. So essentially, like saving throws. In just about every Retroclone or even modern role-playing games, if they use a saving throw sort of mechanic, they're usually broken up in different classes. Some only break down to 3. Others break down to quite a lot more than that. In Swords and Wizardry, it's just one saving throw, and it's based on your class and your level. But you've got the option if you want to do it old school, the way it originally was, knock yourself out. They give you the information right here. We've got options as far as initiative. Do you want to roll initiative like original D&D, where you're simply rolling a 6-sided die? Whatever side's got the highest roll, the entire side gets to go first? Or do you want to use an alternate initiative system? We have different ways of resolving combat. So we have the attack tables, which were the original way of resolving combat in Dungeons and Dragons. Then they moved to hit armor class 0, or as many people would refer to it as THACO. And then, of course, we've got a much more modern approach with the ascending armor class. So there are options for that as well. So I definitely like that. We've got critical hits and ranged attacks, unarmed combat, turning the undead. We get a bit of a gameplay example, which I kind of had to chuckle, because usually most of these rule books will start off with a gameplay example where it's like, oh, it's Jane and Jim and Joe Bob's the referee. This is how things go. So we get some information about traps and loot and some high-level adventuring, and that will wrap up the player book. So one thing I also like about Swords and Wizardry is the information is presented to you without getting too flowery and without too much fluff. You can kind of get right to the point, and that I do like. So as an example here, the races, we get a few paragraphs. It's not page after page after page of information. That said, and I'll say this a few times as I go through this review, I understand there are people who want all that info. I get it. I may not necessarily be that person. So next up, we got the referee book. So this is for the game masters out there. It's for the referees. And as you can see, the colors in this book are a little different than, well, I should say little. They are different than the player book. So one of the things I kind of got a kick out of these booklets is they're kind of color coded. So this is going to be all referee facing information. So how to create dungeons, how to map symbols on maps. Going to get info about wilderness adventuring and challenge levels for monsters. We're going to get treasure. We're going to get some additional combat rules. So battling outside, mass combat, siege combat. We've got combat at sea. We've got aerial combat. But once again, we're not seeing just, like 20 pages devoted to a particular topic. And I am a huge fan of that. So here we got the ship combat. So we'll get into treasure. I will point out that the treasure section of this book is pretty short. And a lot of times when you see a box set, that you'll see a book itself, a booklet itself, like an A5 digest size booklet devoted to treasure. That is included in here. Now, one of the things I'm a huge fan of, and this is more of an old school sort of magic item, is that we don't see a lot of just vanilla magic items. We don't see tons of +1 swords and +1 shields and things like that. We tend to see magic items that are named, and I happen to be a huge fan of magic items that have both a boon and a bane to them. I think that adds a lot to the role-playing possibilities with your group. But we do get some named magical items as well. Then we get information about high-level characters. There's not a lot of info. In fact, very little info about domain play, although at a specific level, your characters can usually create their own strongholds or wizard towers and so on and so forth. So we finish up with hirelings, hiring followers. And that is our referee book. Then we got Spells and Magic. This is the shortest of the books, and it just kind of gets right to the point right off the bat. We're going to jump in. It's just going to have a page about magic, kind of giving you some details. Keeping in mind that there is no specific set game world for Swords and Wizardry, really. So you can utilize this however you'd like. So we're going to jump right into the spells. We've got Mage, Cleric, Magic User, Cleric, and Druid spells. So we get our spell descriptions. They're all in alphabetical order. It's going to tell you what is the class that utilizes it, what is the range, what's the duration, and additional information about that spell itself. I'm a huge fan of these small little nuggets for the spells. And I say that all the time because players don't usually realize this. Maybe they do, but a lot of them don't. That the Game Master has tons of things just bouncing around in their head. And if you're a good Game Master, you're going to make sure that your player characters understand all of their spells far better than you do, because you've got all the other information for the adventure or campaign or what have you, even if it's a one-shot, all jumbling around in your head. So the shorter bits of info, the bullet points, are really, really more effective than having 4 pages devoted to the hold plant spell. Once again, I get it. I understand. A lot of people out there, they want all that information. They want all the fluff. I get it. It's just, I prefer an old school approach to running my fantasy role-playing games. So essentially all we've got here is just a breakdown of all the different spells. The monster summoning is pretty interesting because we have various different levels for the monster suffering. Why do I keep saying suffering? It's summoning. It's like, but I can't speak English today. All right, so there you go. So 39 pages for these spells and magic. And then finally, we have the monsters book. I love the cover artwork to the Monsters book. That said, the artwork within the book is a little bit of a mixed bag. There's some cool artwork, and then there's some artwork that almost looks like it's just like clip art or royalty-free, copyright-free artwork. But we get loads and loads of monsters. Once again, the approach to the way these monsters are broken down with their stat blocks is very, very similar to the spells that we're getting the important information and taking it from there. Now, one thing I will point out for game masters out there, especially if you're not a very experienced game master, or in this case, referee, you don't necessarily get like tactical information for the monsters. So that throws some people off. What I would recommend, and of course, you're not going to use this as gospel, but if you want to get a pretty good idea of different tactics you can use for different monsters, I would definitely recommend picking up a copy of The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And, the author's name is Kenneth. See, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But obviously enough, you can look it up. The Monsters Know What They're Doing. You can get it as an audiobook if you'd like as well. So just kind of showing off all the various different monsters that are in here. So look, as an example, I mean, that artwork is very, very cool. I like that artwork a lot. And then suddenly, I think it's the soldier back here. Maybe I zipped past it. Looks like it's like straight out of like clip art. Or wait a second, I know what we'll take a look at. Right there, the doppelganger. Kind of like, okay. It's like, here we got this really cool line art. And I get it. I mean, it's a variety of different artists, of course. Very cool hill giant there as well. So, like I said, we've got loads and loads of monsters. We'll finish up by the challenge level of them as well. And a little bit of info about how to create monsters. But once again, it's not page after page after page. It's just kind of bullet point nugget sort of information. All right. And that is the Monsters book. So what we get is we get the 4 booklets. We get a set of dice. We get a bookmark, as well as the pad of character sheets. And that's what we find with the Swords and Wizardry complete box set. Let's swing on over to the other camera, and I will share my final thoughts as well as a review score. So I would think a lot of people already have the core book for Swords and Wizardry, are probably curious, should they pick up the box set? And my response to that would be, if you want a collector's item, then I would certainly consider picking it up, especially if you really enjoy Swords and Wizardry. There's a bunch of new artwork, so that's cool as well. But you got to keep in mind, there really isn't anything new outside of the artwork in this edition than what you already have if you own the core book. Of course, if you're just getting the Swords and Wizardry, or you feel the concept of having multiple small digest-sized books is going to make it easier for you to look things up, because I know a lot of people out there are really digging smaller digest-sized books that are, broken up by topic. They're finding it way easier to track things down than going through a 400-page core book. That said, the Swords and Wizardry core book is all of 140, 145 pages anyway. But if you are just getting into Swords and Wizardry and you want something that's a little bit different, it's not just a regular game book, yeah, I would certainly recommend it as well. Do have to ding it because it doesn't have a D6 in mine that I received. It had the 2 D8s. And Also have to say that there's some really cool artwork, but some of the artwork's kind of a mixed bag. All of a sudden you'll be looking at, going through the book and it's like, wait a second, is that clip art? As I had mentioned, especially with the Monsters book. But all in all, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Swords and Wizardry complete box set a very, very solid recommendation with a 9 out of 10. I think it's that good. I got to be honest, if there was a 6-sided die in there, it would have been like a 9.5. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs right here on YouTube. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for gaming news, reviews, plenty of reviews that you don't see videos for. It's important for me to point that out as well. And of course, there's a whole lot more. I mean, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you so much for watching. And until I see you next time, here's hoping that each and every one of you gets to enjoy some excellent gaming with your very own gang. Oh, you're still here. Well, while you're kicking it, how about subscribing to the Gaming Gang channel? Or seeing the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch? Or finding out what YouTube recommends you check out here at my channel? And of course, don't forget, get your geek on at thegaminggang.com.